Ascendance of a Bookworm is my favourite isekai series. Its world-building, characters, and plot are amazing, and I have watched the series more times than I can count. And so, with Season 4 of the anime coming out next year in 2026, and the Hannelor's 5th year at the Royal Academy spin-off light novel having released its first English volume recently, it was really good by the way, I thought I would create a series commenting on the episodes of the anime, noting down my thoughts as well as any other details I notice. And hopefully you can let me know your opinions, so that I can discuss the series with others. So, let's start with episode 1, A World Without Books. The opening scene starts in Ferdinand's hidden room, and the show does a great job of immediately implying the type of person Ferdinand is. We can see his shelves covered with ingredients and flasks, along with the numerous books and scrolls scattered around the room. Now, I don't know about you, but this layout just screams scientist to me, but we'll find out more about this much later. Going back to the scene, we see Ferdinand walk up to Mine with a drink of unknown contents. Next, Ferdinand hands Mine a magical item, and I just want to raise the question, where did he get this from? When he's walking to Mine, he's holding the glass in his right hand, so you would think he had it in his left hand, especially given we can't see it in that scene. But no, when we see Mine drink the liquid, we can see his left hand is empty. So where did it come from? Honestly, I have no clue. It's probably just an oversight in the animation process. But I personally like to believe he had it on his arm and just slid it out from his sleeve. Putting the magically appearing item aside, it is then revealed to us that it is in fact a magic item, letting the viewer know there is a magic system in this world, and that we will learn more about it as we go. Following this, we see Mine falling asleep, presumably from being drugged, and Ferdinand starts monologuing about how Mine is different, and appears to know things that should be inconceivable for a child, before letting us know her most obvious abnormality, her love of books. We then see Ferdinand put on an identical magic item, which also does appear out of nowhere, before claiming he will look at her past and then presumably doing so, and that's the opening scene. I think it does a good job of hinting there is a magic system, although we barely know anything about it at this point, as well as characterizing both Ferdinand, whose name we don't even know at this point, as well as Mine. One thing I would like to comment on is the choice to make this the prologue of the show, because this scene takes place chronologically at the very end of Season 2. I believe it could be to introduce us to Ferdinand early on in the series, considering we wouldn't meet him until the very end of this season, or to reveal that there's a magic system. But otherwise, I'm not really sure, because here's the thing, both the light novel and the manga start with the following scene discussing Mine's past life as Urano, and her tragic end, making their stories completely chronological. So I just don't understand the choice to make the first 2 seasons essentially a flashback. So, if you have any thoughts or reasoning as to why this decision was made, I would love to hear them. The next section is a brief summary of who Mine was and how she lived her life before dying rather ironically to her own books falling and crushing her. Here she details a few genres.
心理学、宗教、歴史、地理、教育学、民族学、数学、物理、地学、科学、生物学、芸術、体育、言語。
And I think it can be easy to forget just how vast topics of books can be, especially in the modern day of the internet. So Urano's list here, which fades out by the way, it keeps going, is excellent at putting the numerous genres on display. Another thing I want to note here is the tilting up of the camera to show the books on the shelf. I think this serves 2 purposes, the first being a literal one to demonstrate the sheer amount of books Urano owned. Alternatively, I picture it as symbolic of how she loves books so much to the point she places them above her, both physically and metaphorically. Finally, as Urano dies, she prays to God to live another life surrounded by books. However, this is anime, and gods tend to enjoy playing games and making jokes, so her final wish will not be fulfilled, at least not for a while. Now we reach the first opening of the show, which uses the song Masshiro, or Pure White. by Sumire Morohoshi, and I hope I pronounced those right. The lyrics are pretty simple, and I think they mainly just reflect Mine's beliefs about how if she has a wish, she'll make it come true. I don't have much to say about the visuals. They're just cute and a good way to show off the show's cast. Although I am curious about how Lutz's dad managed to make it onto the final image with the entire cast, considering I don't even think he shows up a single time in this season. The next thing we see is darkness, and we can hear the real Mine's voice as she dies, stating that it's hot and she can't breathe, symptoms we will discuss later. Then Mine wakes up. Here we get our first look into Mine's early environment. It's bland, although it does have a cobweb to decorate the corner. Nice touch. And the belongings we do see look worn and of low quality. It's rather evident from these initial seconds alone that this is a low-income household. Then, we see Mine's initial confusion at being reborn, and honestly, I'd be pretty confused too if I died and woke up in a child's body. So I think her reaction's reasonable. If anything, I actually think it's rather tame to being in a strange place in a different body, but maybe that's just me. We are then introduced to Effa, Mine's mother, at which point Mine has two thoughts. Firstly, that her hair is green, and I just quickly want to give a shout out to the English dub because I just love the reading of the line, "She has green hair."
Who is that? She has green hair.
And then that she can't understand what she's saying. Starting with the hair colours, they're obviously not natural colours in our world, and I think the colours are just to show the audience that this isn't our world anymore. And another thing is that it just looks cool. It reminds me of all the fun hair colours in Psyche K. The language dilemma is addressed early on, fortunately, and I think it's dealt with nicely. The fact that Mine is then able to understand it due to suddenly receiving the real Mine's memories is a simple way of allowing her to communicate. I also like that the language problem means that Mine isn't just a literary god at the very start of the series, and that she actually has to relearn how to read and write, although this isn't relevant just yet. Furthermore, the identity crisis? I don't really know how to describe it, but Mine's rejection towards being called Mine and being swarmed with the memories of this world causing her a headache. It's just a nice scene. We are then given a scene where Mine realizes that she won't see her real mother again, and it's beautiful how she just lays there and apologizes. I imagine it's a painful experience for Mine, and she feels immense sadness at this moment. Though we will see that Mine largely suppresses her feelings of sadness and bottles them up until the seal breaks at the end of season 2. But for now, the show quickly reminds us of Mine's number one love, books, as she starts searching for them, and Mine appears here to be using the books as a sort of coping mechanism for the sudden change in her life. Now we meet the second member of Mine's new family, Thule, as she immediately asks if Mine is okay. And we see Thule is characterized as a kind person. Now, I do have a quick question. How do you actually pronounce Thule's name? I have always pronounced it as Thule, because that's how it's spelled in the novels. But in the show they pronounce it as Turi. So I just want to know how you pronounce her name. Also, I understand it probably sounds like an R because there's no L sound in Japanese, but that doesn't explain the English dub for me. So if you'd let me know your thoughts, that'd be great. Personal questions aside, back to the scene, and I love how Mine looks utterly confused as she fails to comprehend that Thule doesn't know what a book is. It's just really funny to me, especially this face. After Thule and Effa leave, Mine then jumps upon her opportunity to search for a book, and the sheer disgust on her face when she steps on the dusty floor is just perfect. It's such a nice detail that you can literally see Mine's footprint on the floor. It was just that dusty. After failing to find a book in the bedroom, Mine then attempts to leave the room only to be stopped by her greatest challenge yet, being too short to reach the door handle. Now, in Mine's attempts to open the door, I count 3 jumps and 1 stretch, and yet we see that is enough to have her crouching down and grasping for breath. It's a small thing, but it shows us just how frail and weak Mine's body is. However, using her big brain IQ, she drags possibly the thickest quilt I've ever seen to gain that ever so slight height advantage, which I really don't think makes much of a difference, and manages to open the door before falling back and getting ejected from that quilt. But hey, if it's for books, it's worth it, you know? Moving into the rest of the house, and we discover that the family clearly doesn't care about fire safety because they just left the fire going unattended. But that aside, it too is rather bland, with a small kitchen area, storage for firewood, a rudimentary weaving frame, and a dining table in the middle of the room. It's interesting to see, though, how Mine isn't bothered at all by the bareness of the home, but is only focused on the lack of books once more, theorizing that they may be expensive like in the days before the printing press in our world, and so only the nobility and the extremely wealthy would really have the opportunity to read them. However, in case you couldn't tell from the small size of the house and the rather unclean surfaces, this family aren't quite aristocrats yet. But maybe I'm judging a book by its cover and they're actually just extreme minimalists. Spoiler alert though, they're not. In response to the lack of books, Mine tears apart the house in search of any writing whatsoever. But when she doesn't find any, we see her fall apart as both her loves, books, and her mother, are taken away from her. And I think that's a feeling we can all relate to when you are in an uncomfortable situation and you're holding on to hope, only to find that hope was misplaced. You do feel like you just want to give up and cry. But that's when Effa and Thule return, and one thing I want to get out of the way now is how toned down Mine's parents are in the anime. In the light novels, whilst they are considerate and kind towards Mine because, you know, they're good parents, they are also stricter and react in a way I find more understanding. When Thule returns to discover the kitchen is a mess in the novels, she immediately shouts at Mine. It's largely out of concern, but she doesn't just ignore her misbehavior. Her parents do the same thing, but in the anime they seem to be less strict and it emphasizes their compassionate side and their role as loving parents far more, likely due to the anime having less time to develop their characters. Yet it's when Thule and Effa return that Mine truly breaks down and the tears start flowing uncontrollably as she reveals her true sorrow. Not so much the fact that there's no books, but the fact that she feels so alone surrounded by people who don't understand her, and that's a painful situation to be in. But with Mine crying, we reach the midpoint of the episode. Coming back to the episode, we instantly get some upbeat music and a scene of blue skies, clearly implying that Mine has recollected herself after her breakdown. And it is only now, 3 days after her reincarnation, that she complains about her living conditions. But her two complaints are not having a toilet and having to use a chamber pot, which is just thrown out the window. A perfectly reasonable complaint from someone used to modern hygiene. I mean, not only is it just gross, but if old-timey London taught me anything, it's that poor hygiene results in lower life expectancy. So, a very reasonable concern. And being changed by her father, Gunter. Now, this one requires a bit more thought because, sure, from Mine's point of view, she sees a complete stranger changing her against her will. But from Gunter's point of view, he's just changing his daughter, who at this point is 5 or 6 years old, and probably does this often thinking it's helping out his frail daughter. So, although it's a totally valid complaint from Mine, it's also an equally valid action from her father. Mine then talks about how she even got Thule to wipe her down, which she notes was weird to them. I think this is the first real sign of Mine's cultural dissonance, where her behaviour contrasts with that of this new world and she fails to recognise it. This issue comes up a lot more later, but I do believe this is the first real sign of it. And now we reach the hairpin scene, the start of one of Mine's fashion trends and a perfect display of her inability to empathise with her new family, as she bluntly asks Thule if she can break a leg off her doll to use as a hairpin. What a great sister, am I right? But to be fair, Mine did apologise, and in contrast to what Thule says, Mine probably didn't know how much the doll meant to Thule. And considering that it doesn't show up at all after this scene, I don't even think it means that much to Thule either. We are then greeted with some Thule characterization, as she shows us that she is able to carve a stick. Whilst not sounding that impressive on paper, I wasn't able to do that when I was 6, so I think it shows how skilled Thule is for her age. Now we get some culture lore. Only women who have come of age in this world are allowed to wear their hair up, and it seems like it's a requirement with how many women you see with their hair up. To be completely honest, I don't understand this piece of culture. If I were to guess, I would say it has some role as a symbol of maturity, although I'm pretty certain the religion of this world plays a part, since all female gods wear their hair up, except for Mestianora, who is the only god picted as a child. I think I read somewhere about Chinese women wearing their hair up after marriage in some regions, but I don't know how accurate that is, or if any other cultures are like this. But anyway, now mine wants to wash her hair. But put that thought aside, as it's not returned to this episode, and Effa instead invites mine shopping, since her fever has gone down, and she readily accepts this invitation. Could it be to see the rest of this new world? To go outside for the first time in days? To see people other than her family? Of course not. It's to try and find books. Upon leaving the house for the first time, mine is confronted by the building's stairwell, which she comments are cold, scary, stinky. And it's the stinky that I want to focus on real quick, because that makes me think that that door is some odor erasing beast if she can't smell anything bad inside of the house. Like, that's some impressive tech. But we now see Mine's lack of understanding about her new body once more, as she is confused about why Effa gives her a piggyback ride. We know that this is because Mine's body is weak. I mean, just think back to that scene of her trying to open the bedroom door. Going down the stairs would practically kill her, or at least take her forever. But Mine still doesn't recognize the limits of her body, which is just a nice way to show us that although she's composed herself and is adjusting, she still doesn't understand her new self. We see that she acknowledges Mine's frail body as the reason for this action, but she doesn't realize that Mine's body is her body, thinking that she could manage the stairs. I just want to point out Mine's comment that her building has 5 floors as well. Like, she's never seen a building so high before. It has no significance at all, but I just find it a funny line. A detail that I do like, however, is the base of the buildings being made out of the stone marble material, whilst the upper floors are made of wood. The bottom half, as we will learn way later into the series, I believe even beyond what is currently adapted into the anime, that this is part of the magic system and was constructed by the Lord. The upper wooden sections look made to accommodate a growing population. Our astute Mine then notes how the well is where they get their drinking water from, also implying that this world has no plumbing or even water pumps yet. We then get a shot of the city from above, and I don't know about you, but mine thinks of a less aesthetic Attack on Titan, with the giant walls surrounding it. These walls obviously hint at the fact that there is danger beyond them, much like in Attack on Titan, except in this case it's through Fey beasts. Also, speaking of aesthetics, is it just me or are the streets remarkably clean considering that everyone presumably hurls their human waste out the window? Now, possible animation oversight or funny magic shenanigans just like the appearing magic items at the start? Personally, I think the former, but that's up to you to decide. Anyway, Mine says it reminds her of a medieval European town, which, to be fair, this scene certainly does look similar to Nuremberg's old town. But I disagree if we're talking about the typical plain wooden buildings that lie in every other shot except for that one. We then are shown the poorest shot of the cathedral and told about the baptisms, but we'll discuss that in the future. We are also briefly informed that beyond the castle gate is the noble quarter. Clearly, these nobles want to be separated from the commoners, so I wonder if that'll be important in the future. Who knows? We also learn about Gunter working as the guard at the south gate. Now, personally, I don't really like this section of the episode, between the cathedral up until we learn about Gunter, because it feels a bit lore-dumpy to me. Like, throughout this episode, we've been given small pieces of information about this world, but now in a 40-second clip, we are told about religion, cultural events, class divides, and Dad's job just like that. It makes sense that Mine would be curious, and it does play out like this in the light novel, but it just seems so sudden to me. Our ever observant Mine then notes how, given the lordom she just received, this must be a city, and a capital one at that. And it's here we see the lack of writing, as shop signs are not written, but depicted through images. Whilst this could hint towards a writing system not existing as Mine fears, the more likely reasoning is that it's simply easier for the vastly illiterate population here to understand. Granted, Mine is largely unaware of the literacy rate at this time, as is the viewer on initial watch. But shortly after, a number system is revealed, and Mine quickly takes delight in trying to figure it out, only to quickly faint after seeing a chicken be butchered. When Mine wakes up, she says she's not feeling well and insists on her mother going shopping alone whilst she asks the shop owner if she can wait there for her mother. And it's here in this shop that we see what is the holy grail of this world to Mine, a book. And I love how Mine's excitement and enthusiasm comes across in this scene, when contrasted with the shopkeeper's nonchalant tone. But as quickly as her dream is realized, it is taken away by the revelation that only those pesky nobles can actually afford books. Darn, it's always so annoying when you can't afford the things you want. So I suppose that's why Mine then kowtows to the shopkeeper, begging him to let her just hold the book. And here is where we see another aspect of Mine's cultural dissonance, as kowtowing isn't typical in this world. And I think the long, silent pause here just shows how my guy has no clue how to respond. But being the responsible owner that he is, he denies Mine the right to hold the book, and she accepts it. On the walk home, it's nice to see that Mine isn't feeling well. Not due to fainting like Ephra assumes, but now because she knows she can't have any access to books. So in a sense, what we see right now isn't a physical illness, but something far more akin to depression. However, she quickly comes to the decision that if she can't buy any books, she'll just make them herself. This is a nice way to end the episode, as it demonstrates one of the most prevalent of Mine's traits, that being her perseverance and will to make her dreams a reality. And now we reach the outro for this season, and it's called Kamikazari no Tenshi, or Hair Ornament Angel, by Megumi Nakajima. And truthfully, I have no clue if it has any significance or meaning, but it sounds and looks nice. To end this episode, we get our first chibi interaction between Ferdinand and Mine. It's a simple one, just Ferdinand being utterly exacerbated with Mine's love of books. Her telling him to essentially shut up before nearly spoiling us about when he shows up again. Unbelievable behaviour, am I right? But with that fun little scene, episode 1 is over. So if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Have a good day, and I hope to see you in episode 2. Bye.